Most space operas are about heroes saving the galaxy. Legend of the Galactic Heroes is about governments trying not to lose it. Mobilization, the fifth novel in Yoshiki Tanaka's series, takes place at a stage in the war where strategy is no longer about bold victories or dramatic turnarounds. Instead, it's about damage control, desperate decisions, and the growing sense that history might already be moving in a direction no one can fully stop. And that shift in tone is exactly what makes this book so compelling and so heavy. I'll start with a spoiler-free overview for anyone new to the series, and then later on I'll move into full spoilers to talk about the major decisions and turning points that define this book. So if you've never read Legend of the Galactic Heroes, here's the quick setup. The story follows a long war between two very different political systems. A deeply flawed democracy and an authoritarian empire led by an ambitious reformer. And at the center are two opposing commanders whose rivalry shapes the course of the conflict. Not as simple hero and villain, but as two people trying to lead their nations through an increasingly brutal and complicated war. And Mobilization drops us into a moment where that war reaches a new dangerous phase. Earlier books have big battles, rising careers, and dramatic turning points. But this book is different. The scale is much larger, the tone is heavier, and the focus shifts toward what happens when a long war starts pushing entire governments toward collapse. You don't need to know every past detail to understand what this book represents in the series. It's the moment where the conflict stops feeling distant and starts feeling like a fight for survival. Now, the series is not a fast, flashy military sci-fi. Much closer to a political drama, a historical war epic, and a story about leadership under pressure. Sure, there are space battles, but the real tension comes from decisions and not the battles. Leaders have to choose between bad options, and governments struggle under the weight of war. And victories come at an enormous cost. If you like stories where strategy, politics, and moral dilemmas matter more than the action scenes, this book delivers that in a big way. The tone of Mobilization is serious and tense. There's a constant sense that events are moving in a direction that may be impossible to stop. It's not an emotional character drama, and it's not a light adventure. It's written like a historical account of a war turning point. Measured, detailed, and focused on the bigger picture. Now, some readers may find it dense because of the military movement and the political context. But if you enjoy layered, thoughtful science fiction, that depth is exactly the appeal. What makes Mobilization important isn't a single shocking event. It's the shift in momentum. This is where the series shows what happens when one side gains an overwhelming pressure and the other side is forced into defensive survival. And leaders can no longer aim for victory, only damage control. It's the kind of story that makes the war feel real, complicated, and historically inevitable. So, and even without knowing the full series, you can see why Mobilization is such a key installment. It deepens the political and strategic side of the story and shows how wars aren't just won with brilliance, they're shaped by pressure and difficult choices. And if you like thoughtful, large-scale sci-fi with serious political weight, this is exactly the kind of series The Legend of the Galactic Heroes is known for. From here on out, I'm going to move into full spoilers for Mobilization and parts of the earlier books in the series. So if you're new to the Galactic Heroes and want to go in blind, this is the moment to pause the video, read the books and come back later. And for everyone else, let's talk about what actually happens. The heart of Mobilization is the Empire's massive advance toward Heinesen, the Alliance capital. In this book, Vaesen is no longer acting as a buffer. The Alliance suddenly realizes just how exposed it is. The war is no longer being fought on distant frontiers. It's heading straight for the political and civilian heart of the state. And that shift in geography completely changes the tone of the conflict. And I think the defining moment of the novel is Young's decision to leave Iserlohn Fortress. Iserlohn isn't just a stronghold. At this point, it's a symbol for everything that Young has accomplished. And abandoning it almost feels unthinkable. But Young understands that holding a fortress means nothing if the capital falls and civilians are slaughtered. So he chooses mobility over pride. I think it's a brilliant but also a painful decision. Strategical it's sound, it's emotional heavy, and politically it's risky. It also shows how different Young is from many of the Alliance leaders. He prioritizes lives over symbols. And from that point on, Young's campaign becomes a masterclass in strategic delay. He doesn't have the strength to cross the Imperial advance head-on, but instead he buys time, with which he avoids a decisive defeat, and he forces the Empire into drawn-out operations. And every engagement is about survival and postponement. And Tanaka makes it clear how exhausting that kind of war is, not just for the fleets, but also for morale and national stability. At the same time, Reinhardt, who is used to the decisive victories, grows increasingly frustrated with Young's evasive strategy. He has the superior force, he has the momentum, but Young refuses to give him the clean, glorious victory he wants. And that tension between Reinhardt's desire for resolution and Young's strategy of delay drives much of the novel's conflict. It turns the rivalry into something different. It's less about brilliance versus brilliance and more about impatience versus endurance. And by the end of Mobilization, one thing is clear. The Free Planets Alliance is no longer in control of its own fate. It's reacting, surviving and holding on. Even when Young succeeds tactically, the strategic picture keeps getting worse. And that's what makes this book so powerful. It shows how a nation can lose a war slowly, even while winning individual engagements. So Mobilization is the moment where the war stops being romantic and starts feeling historical. The empire advances, the democracy strains, and great leaders make impossible choices. And victory starts to look less like triumph and more like simply living to fight another day. And it's not the flashiest book in the series, but it might be one of the most important, because it shows the true cost of momentum in war. That's my review of Mobilization. I can't wait to start the next book and see how the events continue, because we are just at the middle of the story. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought of this book and of the series overall. And thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again.